Live pictures of street rallies in Oakland, California. Now, racism and hate crimes against minorities have increased in the United States after the election of Donald Trump as president. Police say two assailants confronted a Muslim woman at the San Diego State University with comments about Trump and the Muslim community. The attackers then took off with the victim's car and backpack. In another incident, a male assailant pulled a Muslim female's headscarf before choking and throwing her off balance. At the New York University, students discovered the name of the president-elect written on the door to a prayer room for Muslims. Some U.S. universities reported a racist graffiti written on the wall, including "Whites Only" and "White America." Some students at a Michigan middle school chanted "Build the Wall" in the cafeteria, referring to Trump's campaign pledge to build a wall on the Mexican border. Donald Trump has been criticized during the campaign season for his inflammatory language against Muslims and other minorities. Now, for more on this story, we're joined from New York by Mr. Don DeBar, activist and commentator. Mr. DeBar, thank you very much for being with us. We are hearing of a rise in racism, racist attacks and hate crimes against minorities after the election of Donald Trump. Do you think that there is a correlation between the election of Trump as the next U.S. president and the rise in hate attacks and racial attacks?
First, I know CNN is reporting a string of attacks. Mostly the attacks are someone wrote something on a wall in a bathroom in a high school of that character. And I noticed there's maybe a dozen such incidents that are listed in this article. There are 36,000 high schools in the United States between public and private. If that's an extensive report, a complete report of the incidents, that's probably a normal day. There's a different phenomenon that's going on in the country, and the media is still very heavily involved. I don't think Trump was exaggerating, whatever he is, forget what he is, when he identified correctly that the media had entirely sided here in the United States with Hillary Clinton's campaign. For about a year. During the primary process, they shepherded Clinton's campaign through Sanders' campaign, ignoring Sanders at first until they had to finally cover him, and then covering him very poorly in relation to how they covered Clinton. But also in the general election, from the time of the conventions forward, it was essentially a wall-to-wall attack on Trump as a racist, Islamophobe, anti-immigrant, etc., and not dealing with any of the policy proposals that he brought up. Those policy proposals were the reason that the elite in the United States were allied with Clinton, and they had to do with trade, job creation, the role that finance capital plays in the U.S. economy, the things that are fundamental to their power. Now that Trump has been elected, despite all of that, first of all, there were things about his campaign, as every Republican campaign, this is how you get the Republican base secured, it contains elements of all those things, although they're mischaracterized the way he actually stated it, but very ugly and scary. Those trends are in the United States all the time. People organize around them and work on the ground all the time. This spate of activity in the past 2 days comes from somewhere else. I don't mean all the people that are protesting, but people organizing and publicizing these rallies right now include people that are doing it for political reasons that have to do with preventing Trump from delivering on the things that he promised with respect to trade and job creation. You have to consider that element of it, because the U.S. media hasn't gone to sleep. They're on the same project they were on through the whole campaign. So, I'm looking at the quantity of events here and the character of them and the intensity of them, and they're disgusting, but I don't think they show anything about the character of either Trump voters or the people of the United States, other than this is normal fare, and 12 out of 36,000 high schools with events like that, scrolling on a wall or whatever, I don't think that that's something to be particularly frightened of. Something to teach the kids is wrong, but I wouldn't get too crazy about it.
So do you think the media is sort of putting more spotlight on such incidents now that they're happening, now that Trump is the president, to sort of link the two things together? Because there are some analysis, some analysts have been saying that the reason Trump won was because he said things that some Americans wanted to say, but they just were too shy to say it. For instance, his policies about immigrants and his policies about his remarks about Muslims, they were things that many Americans maybe agreed with him, but they just couldn't bring themselves to saying it. So which one is right? Is that really the case?
I'm certain that there are elements of that. For example, they tried to paint Trump as Hitler and, the rise of the white working class that, by the way, occurs or is expressed not just as the vote for Trump, but was also the vote for Sanders, and also the rise of the working class in general, which you see with the people that had been in the streets, Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street. People have been in the streets since 2008 for certain in the United States, and those people have been in for the long haul. This is a phenomenon that exists, but the real phenomenon here that affected tens of millions of people and that were the bulk, in my opinion, of Trump voters. And I went to the Republican and Democratic conventions. I met hundreds of those people. What was different here is that people in the Republican Party who previously voted based on abortion, gay rights, dog whistles about racism and such, all instead voted for Trump because they said to me, he said he's going to get me a job. Their situation, their condition as a class, as a part of the working class, has made everything, all of the structures intolerable, their condition intolerable, the structure is illegitimate, and they looked to him as an outsider who was saying what they wanted. And what they really wanted was jobs.
So you believe that his economic policies were actually more significant, more important than the other things that he said about race issues, about immigration, and about Muslims?
Look at Sanders. You had the same phenomenon in the Democratic Party, exactly the same, without that stuff. Now, if you're running in a Republican Party primary, you have to understand the demographics, the political trends that constituted coming into this election, the Republican coalition. And what was funny to me, ironic, is that the people who assembled it, going back to the days of Nixon and the Southern Strategy, the Reagan Democrats, the racist dog whistles and policies, all of those people went to Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, along with her husband, helped implement much of that program in the 1990s, the withdrawal of welfare, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, mass incarceration, all of these things. To me, the irony of the media pointing to Trump as a racist and Islamophobe as against Clinton, who's killed thousands. I mean, I don't know how many people died in Libya, tens of thousands, maybe 100,000. I know that a country that had 6 million people in it now has 4. So, Trump is an Islamophobe, but Clinton killed Muslims all over the place, Syria, Afghanistan, on and on. And so the same with Trump and immigration. Yeah, he says ugly things. He has said ugly things. Obama, with Clinton as a Secretary of State, deported more people than all presidents before them combined. So, the irony of them standing on one side and pointing to Trump and his supporters as something else, it's inescapable. But the real thing here is this. You have an uprising of the working class in the United States, of the workers in place, where they are, where, they're in the costume that they came to the ball with, all of the contradictions, the history of racism and everything else in this country, they all bring that to the party. But they rose up and lifted Trump. They rose up and lifted Sanders, and they've been in the streets. And the strategy of the elite, which is scared to death by this phenomenon and Brexit and other things that are going on around the world, has been to keep them divided and to set them upon each other. And people that really want to see change in the United States have to find a way to make common cause with the bulk of the Trump supporters who were voting on their economic interests, the Sanders voters the same, and some of the people that voted for Hillary Clinton that were just afraid of Trump, and then the people in the streets. There's a common program for working people In fact, on the ground, they have to politically find a way to stitch together joint action on a program of A, jobs, and B, by the way, while we look at World War III, peace.
Mr. DeBar, activist and commentator, talking to us live out of New York. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.